The elevator doors slid open with a gentle chime, revealing the opulent corridor of the hotel's top floor. Lucas adjusted his white gloves, balancing the silver tray with practiced precision. The crystal glass of aged whiskey caught the light from the chandeliers, throwing amber reflections across his face. 22 years old, working 2 jobs to pay off his mother's medical debts, he straightened his shoulders before approaching Suite 614. 3 knocks. Silence. Then the heavy door opened. The man who stood before him was tall, imposing in an impeccably tailored suit, but it wasn't his wealth or power that made Lucas freeze. It was the strange expression that crossed the older man's face. Shock, disbelief, and something that looked almost like fear. "Your whiskey, sir," Lucas said, extending the tray. William's hand trembled as he reached for the glass. It slipped from his grasp, shattering against the marble floor. Whiskey splashed across Italian leather shoes, but the millionaire didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. I'm sorry," Lucas stammered, kneeling to collect the shards. "I'll bring another right away." "No." William's voice was rough, barely audible. "What's your name?" "Lucas, sir." "Lucas," the way he said it, like testing unfamiliar, yet somehow precious syllables on his tongue. "Who are you?" Lucas looked up, confused. "Just staff, sir. Room service." "Your eyes." William stepped back, gripping the door frame for support. "How old are you?" 22. Lucas stood, glass fragments collected on the tray. Something about this man's intensity made his skin prickle. "Is everything all right, sir?" William composed himself with visible effort. "Yes, fine. Bring another drink." And Lucas, "Sir? Make sure it's you who brings it." Back in the service elevator, Lucas examined his reflection in the mirrored wall. Dark hair, green eyes with that unusual gold fleck in the left iris, the small scar beneath his right eyebrow from a childhood fall. Nothing remarkable, nothing to explain the way that wealthy man had looked at him, like seeing a ghost. "The guest in 614 is being weird with you too?" Maria asked, leaning against the bar counter when Lucas returned to request another whiskey. "What do you mean too?" Maria shrugged, preparing the drink. "He's been asking questions about you since he checked in yesterday. When you work, your schedule. Oliver practically had to remind him it's inappropriate to discuss staff's personal information." Lucas frowned. "I've never met him before." "Well, he seems to know you." She handed him the fresh glass. "Be careful up there. Rich men with obsessions are never good news." When Lucas returned to Suite 614, William had regained his composure. He accepted the drink with steady hands, then placed it untouched on a side table. "Your mother," William said abruptly. "What was her name?" Something cold slithered down Lucas's spine. "Sir, I don't think—" "Helena." William wasn't asking. "Helena with the laugh that could light up rooms, who wore a silver medallion of St. Christopher." Lucas's hand went instinctively to his chest, where that very medallion hung beneath his uniform. His mother's most precious possession, given to him on her deathbed 6 months ago. "How do you know my mother?" Lucas whispered. William stared at him with eyes that mirrored his own, in a face that could have been Lucas's own future. "Because 23 years ago, I was a different man. A coward who walked away from the greatest gift life offered him." The room seemed to tilt beneath Lucas's feet as realization dawned. "No," he said, backing toward the door. "No." But they both knew the truth that had been hidden for 22 years. The same jawline, the same distinctive eyes, the same small cleft in their chins. William took a step forward. "Lucas, I'm your—" "Don't." Lucas raised his hand, stopping the word from being spoken. "Don't you dare say it." He turned and fled, the silver tray clattering to the floor behind him, while 22 years of abandoned dreams and unanswered questions thundered in his chest. The staff quarters were a maze of narrow corridors beneath the glamour of the hotel. Lucas slammed his locker shut, hands trembling as he changed into street clothes. The medallion felt heavy against his skin, suddenly burning with questions he'd never thought to ask. "Hey!" Maria appeared in the doorway, concern etched across her face. "Oliver's looking for you. Something about the guest in 614 offering you a—" "I quit." Lucas yanked his backpack from the narrow shelf. Maria blocked his path. "What happened up there?" "Nothing. Nothing doesn't make people quit jobs they desperately need." Lucas glanced at the clock. His night class started in 30 minutes. The class he took after working 12-hour shifts, the law degree he was slowly piecing together credit by credit while his peers raced ahead with their parents' money. "That man," he finally said, voice barely steady, "he knew my mother." And the truth stuck in his throat. How could he explain the impossible connection? The resemblance no stranger could ignore. "And nothing. I need air." He brushed past her, ignoring Oliver calling his name as he pushed through the service exit into the alley. Rain had started, slicking the pavement and soaking through his thin jacket as he walked aimlessly, the city lights blurring through his tears. William watched from his suite window as a figure emerged from the back of the hotel. Even from 20 floors up, he recognized the walk, the set of those shoulders. He pressed his palm against the cold glass, tracing the path of the young man who carried his blood but not his name. The chest pain returned, sharp and insistent. William fumbled for his medication, swallowing it dry as memories flooded back. Helena's smile when they first met at university, her tears when he'd chosen his career over their future, the letter he'd started writing 100 times but never sent. He hadn't known about the pregnancy when he left. By the time whispers reached him years later, he was building his hotel empire, engaged to a senator's daughter, a strategic alliance, not a love match. Pride and fear kept him from seeking the truth. The engagement had eventually fallen apart, like all his relationships, but by then, reaching out seemed impossible. And now, fate had orchestrated this cruel reunion, placing his son, in the role of servant in his own hotel. "Mr. William?" His personal assistant knocked softly. "Your investment call starts in 5 minutes. Cancel it." William didn't turn from the window. Cancel everything. For the first time in 30 years, business could wait. The university campus was nearly deserted when Lucas arrived, soaked and late. He slipped into the back of the lecture hall, but the professor's words about constitutional law washed over him without registering. Instead, he heard his mother's voice from long ago. "Your father had the same eyes," she'd tell him on birthdays, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "The same way of frowning when you concentrate." She never spoke ill of the man who abandoned them. Even as she worked 3 jobs, even through her illness, she maintained that someday he might return. "Why would you want him to?" Lucas had asked once, watching her struggle to pay bills. "Because you deserve to know your history," she'd answered, "and because people change. Sometimes they need years to grow into the person they should have been all along." Lucas had stopped believing in that possibility around age 12. By 16, he'd built his life around the certainty that he had only himself to rely on. Now, at 22, with his mother gone and law school slipping further from reach despite his efforts, the sudden appearance of the father he'd never known felt less like miracle than mockery. After class, he found himself walking toward the hotel again, pulled by something stronger than anger. The rain had stopped, but the night air remained cold and damp against his face as he stared up at the illuminated windows of Suite 614. "He's been asking for you." Lucas turned. Oliver stood a few feet away, holding out an envelope. "He insisted I give you this if you didn't return for your shift." The envelope was heavy, expensive paper. Lucas took it reluctantly, already knowing what he'd find inside. "Whatever he's offering," Oliver said quietly, "you should at least hear him out." "Why?" "Because in 20 years managing this hotel, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you. Like a drowning man seeing shore." Lucas waited until Oliver left before opening the envelope. Inside was not money, as he'd expected, but a faded photograph. A young woman with Lucas's smile, her head thrown back in laughter, her hand resting on the arm of a much younger William. Around her neck hung the St. Christopher medallion, And on the back, in careful handwriting, "The day I should have been brave enough to stay." Dawn broke over the city as Lucas stood before Suite 614, the photograph clutched in his hand, exhaustion and anger wrestling within him. He'd walked the streets all night, calling Maria to cover his morning shift at his second job. He couldn't remember the last time he'd slept. His knock was answered immediately, as if William had been waiting by the door. "You came." Relief flooded the older man's face. "Not for what you think." Lucas held up the photograph. "This doesn't fix anything." William stepped aside. "Please, come in." The suite was larger than the apartment where Lucas had grown up. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the awakening city, bathed in golden morning light. On the coffee table sat breakfast for two, untouched. "I thought you might be hungry," William said, gesturing to the food. When Lucas didn't move, he sighed. "Or we can just talk. What could you possibly say after 22 years of silence?" William moved to the window, shoulders bent beneath his expensive shirt. He looked older in the harsh morning light, more vulnerable than he had the night before. "I met your mother when we were both 19, he began. "I was working my way through university. She was studying literature. For 2 years, she was everything to me." Lucas remained standing, arms crossed, as William described their whirlwind romance, their dreams, their plans. "Then I got an offer, a chance to work abroad, the first step toward everything I thought I wanted. Helena wanted to come with me, but the position wouldn't allow it. So you chose money over her." William flinched. "I chose fear. Fear that I wasn't enough, that I'd fail her. I promised I'd send for her once I was established. But you never did." "No." He turned to face Lucas. 3 months became 6, became a year. My ambition grew. The distance between us seemed insurmountable. Eventually, it was easier to stop calling, stop writing. Lucas's laugh was bitter. "Easier for you, maybe. I didn't know she was pregnant when I left." William's voice broke. "When I heard rumors years later, I was engaged to someone else, building what would become my company. I told myself it was too late, that disrupting her life would be selfish." "Selfish?" Lucas stepped forward, fury rising. "My mother worked until she collapsed to put food on our table. She pawned her jewelry when I needed school supplies. She went without medicine so I could have new shoes. And you were worried about disrupting our lives?" William's face crumpled. "I was a coward. There's no other explanation, no excuse. Did you ever look for us? Even once?" A long pause stretched between them. "I paid an investigator once, 10 years ago," William finally admitted. "He found her, found you. I received a file with photographs. You were 12, winning a debate competition." Lucas remembered that day. The pride on his mother's face, how they'd celebrated with ice cream they couldn't afford. The memory, once precious, now felt tainted. "I almost came to you then," William continued. "I had the car waiting, but I convinced myself you were better off without my interference, that your mother had surely told you I was dead, or that I was a monster. I told myself I was protecting you both." "Protecting yourself," Lucas corrected. "She never told me anything bad about you. Even when I asked why you left, she said you were just young and scared." His voice caught. "She defended you. Until the day she died." William's head snapped up. "When?" "6 months ago. Cancer." Lucas's words were clipped, clinical. "She fought for 3 years." William staggered back as if struck. "I didn't know. God, I didn't know." "Why would you? You chose not to be part of our lives." "If I had known she was sick." "What? You would have swooped in with your millions? Played the returning hero?" Lucas shook his head. "She wouldn't have accepted your help anyway. She had too much pride. Like her son." A ghost of a smile touched William's lips. For a moment, something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. The first acknowledgement of their shared blood. Then Lucas remembered the years of watching his mother struggle, of being the man of the house before he was even a teenager, of holding her hand as cancer took her away piece by piece. "I have to go," he said abruptly. "I have another job." "Lucas, please." "No." He placed the photograph carefully on the table. "You don't get to rewrite history because you suddenly feel guilty. You don't get to claim me as your son when it's convenient. That's not what this is." "Then what is it? Why now?" William looked at him helplessly. "Because fate gave me one last chance to make something right." Lucas reached the door before William's voice stopped him again. "Your mother once told me that people deserve second chances," he said quietly. "Not because they've earned them, but because without forgiveness, we all remain trapped in our worst mistakes." Lucas turned, eyes blazing. "Don't you dare use her words to manipulate me." "I'm not." William held out a business card. "If you ever want to talk again, about her, about anything, I'm staying indefinitely." Lucas took the card automatically, then left without another word. In the elevator, he nearly threw it away, but something stopped him. Maybe it was his mother's voice in his head, still believing people could change. Or maybe it was the flicker of recognition he couldn't deny when he looked at the man who gave him life, then walked away. Either way, he slipped the card into his pocket as the elevator descended, carrying him back to the reality he'd built without a father's help. 3 weeks passed. The seasons shifted, summer heat giving way to autumn's first chill. Lucas threw himself into work and studies, picking up extra shifts to make up for the night he'd missed. The business card remained untouched in his wallet, a constant reminder he couldn't bring himself to discard. "He's still here, you know," Maria mentioned casually one evening as they restocked the bar. "Suite 614. Longest stay on record." Lucas concentrated on aligning bottles. "I don't care. He asks about you every day. Tell him I changed jobs." "I would, except he's not stupid." "And neither am I." She leaned against the counter. "Why don't you just talk to him again?" "What's there to say? Thanks for the DNA. Sorry you missed the first 22 years of my life." Maria shrugged. "Maybe thanks for not giving up this time." Lucas scoffed, but her words lingered. That night, unable to sleep, he finally read the business card more carefully. On the back, William had written a phone number, not his office, but personal. Below it, anytime, for anything. The next morning, Oliver caught him in the staff corridor. "Mr. William collapsed last night," he said without preamble. "Heart attack. He's at Memorial Hospital." Lucas felt the world tilt beneath him. "Is he alive, but in serious condition?" Oliver hesitated. "He was asking for you before the ambulance came." "I barely know him." "But he knows you're his son." At Lucas's startled look, Oliver nodded. "I've worked for him for 20 years. I remember when he received that file about you a decade ago. He kept your debate competition photo in his wallet. That doesn't make him my father. No. But the fact that he's never stayed in one place longer than a week until now, that he's been waiting for you to come back while his business demands his presence elsewhere, that might mean something." Lucas went through his shift in a daze, dropping 2 orders and mixing up room numbers. At closing time, he found himself on the bus to Memorial Hospital, unsure why he was going or what he would say when he arrived. The cardiac ward was quiet, visiting hours long over. A night nurse stopped him. "I'm here to see William," Lucas said. "I'm his—" he faltered. "Family." She studied him, then nodded. "Room 423. 5 minutes only." William lay surrounded by machines, tubes, and wires connecting his body to blinking monitors. His skin was gray, his powerful frame diminished against white hospital sheets. For the first time, Lucas realized just how much older William was, nearly 60, with the decades of their separation etched into the lines of his face. "You came." William's voice was weak, but his eyes brightened. He tried to sit up, wincing. "Don't move." Lucas awkwardly took the chair beside the bed. "Oliver told me what happened. Minor setback. They don't put you in cardiac intensive care for minor setbacks." A ghost of William's former smile appeared. "You sound like your mother. She never let me get away with minimizing things either." The mention of Helena created a bridge between them, the one person they both had loved in their different ways. The doctors say I need surgery, William continued. Bypass, scheduled for tomorrow morning. Lucas nodded, uncertain how to respond. Were you supposed to wish good luck to the father who abandoned you before you were born? Comfort the stranger whose blood ran in your veins. I've been thinking about time, William said softly. How quickly it passes. How much I've wasted. Is that why you stayed at the hotel? You knew your heart was failing? No. I stayed because I finally found something more important than business meetings and investment portfolios. His gaze held Lucas's. I stayed for the chance to know my son. Lucas looked away, uncomfortable with the naked emotion in William's eyes. Look, he said, I just came to make sure you weren't dying. Not yet, though I'm overdue for some karma. An uncomfortable silence fell between them, filled with beeping monitors and the distant sounds of the hospital at night. I heard the nurses talking, William finally said. They've been trying to contact my next of kin. What did you tell them? The truth. That my son might come, but I haven't earned the right to expect it. Lucas studied his shoes. I have class tomorrow morning, and work after. Of course. William's disappointment was palpable, though he tried to hide it. Thank you for coming tonight. As Lucas stood to leave, William reached for something on the bedside table, a small leather portfolio. If something happens, he said, pressing it into Lucas's hands, this explains everything. About your inheritance, about arrangements I've made for your education. I don't want your money. I know. But I want you to have the opportunities I denied you all these years. William's grip on the portfolio was surprisingly strong. Please, just take it. Read it or burn it, your choice. Lucas accepted it reluctantly. At the door, he paused. What time is your surgery? 7. Lucas nodded once, then left without looking back, the portfolio heavy in his hands. That night, he sat at his small kitchen table, staring at the leather case while his coffee grew cold. Inside were documents, letters, and a revised will naming Lucas as William's sole heir. But what caught his attention was a thick envelope labeled, "For Helena, never sent." Inside were decades of letters, apologies, explanations, confessions, letters tracking William's rise to wealth and power alongside his growing emptiness. Letters asking about their child, whether it was a boy or girl, what name she had chosen. Letters never mailed, never read, never answered. The last was dated just 3 months ago. Helena, I saw our son today. He doesn't know me, but I recognized him instantly. He has your smile, your kindness, and my eyes. The moment I saw him, everything I've built seemed meaningless compared to what I threw away. I don't deserve his forgiveness or yours, but I'm staying until he sends me away. It's 22 years too late, but I'm not running this time. With eternal regret and love, William Lucas read until dawn broke, tears blurring the words on pages yellowed with age and regret. When his alarm rang for class, he made his decision. The surgical waiting room was empty when Lucas arrived at 6:45 a.m., still wearing yesterday's clothes, the leather portfolio tucked under his arm. He hadn't slept, hadn't showered, had called in sick to both jobs for the first time in years. A doctor in surgical scrubs approached. Are you Mr. Williams' son? The question no longer felt like a betrayal to answer. Yes. We're prepping him now. The procedure should take 4 to 6 hours, barring complications. The doctor's expression was professionally neutral. Given his condition, you should know there are risks. Can I see him? Before? The doctor checked his watch. Quickly. William was awake but groggy from pre-surgical medication when Lucas entered. His eyes widened in surprise. You're here. I read the letters, Lucas said simply. Understanding passed between them. William's eyes filled with tears. I should have sent them. Yes. Lucas moved closer to the bed, but I'm glad I got to read them now. Lucas, if something happens, don't. Lucas cut him off. You'll get through this, and then we'll talk. Really talk. For a moment, they were silent, the weight of 22 years suspended between them. "She would be proud of you," William finally said. "The man you've become without me." "She was." Lucas swallowed hard. "And she never stopped believing you'd find your way back someday." Orderlies arrived to transport William to surgery. As they prepared to wheel him away, Lucas found himself reaching for his father's hand. "I'll be here," he promised, "when you wake up." The surgery stretched to 7 hours. Lucas paced the waiting room, drank vending machine coffee, and called Maria to explain his absence. By the time the surgeon appeared, exhaustion had settled into his bones. "We encountered complications," the doctor began, and Lucas felt his heart drop. "But he's stabilized now. The next 24 hours will be critical." "Can I see him?" "He's in recovery. Once he's moved to ICU, you can have 5 minutes every hour." Those 5-minute visits became Lucas's entire world. Between them, he dozed in uncomfortable waiting room chairs, reading and rereading the letters to Helena. William drifted in and out of consciousness, machines breathing for him, monitoring every heartbeat. During the third visit, William opened his eyes. "Still here," he whispered through cracked lips. Lucas leaned closer. "I said I would be." A nurse appeared to check vitals, announcing the 5 minutes were up. As Lucas turned to leave, William's hand caught his wrist with surprising strength. "Wait!" He fumbled weakly at his neck, trying to reach something beneath the hospital gown. Lucas gently helped, finding a thin chain. On it hung a small key. "Hotel safe," William managed. "Something for you." The nurse cleared her throat meaningfully. Lucas carefully removed the chain and key. "I'll be back next hour," he promised. In Suite 614, the safe was hidden behind a painting, a small landscape of mountains that Lucas recognized with a jolt. An identical print had hung in his childhood home, his mother's favorite. The key fit perfectly. Inside was a single velvet box. The medallion inside was identical to the one Lucas wore, St. Christopher, patron saint of travelers. But while his was worn smooth from his mother's years of wearing it, this one was pristine, untouched. A note lay beneath it. "I bought matching medallions the day I left. I gave Helena hers and kept this one, promising we would find our way back to each other. I broke that promise. But perhaps these matching medallions can finally serve their purpose, to protect travelers until they find their way home." Lucas clutched both medallions in his palm, feeling the weight of parallel lives, of paths that should have crossed decades earlier. With sudden clarity, he understood that while he couldn't change the past, the future remained unwritten. When he returned to the hospital, William was more alert, though still weak. "You found it," he said, seeing the medallion around Lucas's neck alongside his mother's. "Why did you keep it all these years?" William's eyes drifted to the window. "At first, as a reminder of my promise to return. Later, as punishment for breaking that promise." His gaze returned to Lucas. "I never expected forgiveness, even now." "I haven't forgiven you," Lucas said honestly. "I don't know if I ever fully can." Pain flashed across William's face, but he nodded. "I understand. But," Lucas continued, choosing his words carefully, "my mother believed people could change, and she believed in second chances." He twisted the medallion between his fingers. "Maybe I can try to believe that too." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, as William slowly recovered, they began the careful process of getting to know each other. Lucas brought his law books, studying in the hospital room between classes and reduced work shifts. William, when strong enough, shared stories of Helena that Lucas had never heard, how she sang off key, how she could recite poetry from memory, how her laugh was his favorite sound in the world. Slowly, a fragile bridge formed between past and present. The day William was discharged, Lucas helped him back to the hotel. At the door to Suite 614, William hesitated. "I need to return to headquarters soon," he said. "There's a company to run." Lucas nodded, disappointment mixing with relief. Perhaps it was too soon for anything more than their cautious hospital routine. But, William continued, I've been thinking, the city branch needs attention. I could relocate here, permanently. The offer hung in the air between them, not just of William's presence, but of time. Time to heal, to know each other, to perhaps one day become something like family. I have a spare room, Lucas found himself saying. It's small, nothing like this. But when you're ready to leave the hotel, you could stay there until you find a place. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't forgetting. But as they stood together, matching medallions catching the light, it felt like the beginning of a new journey, one they would navigate together. I'd like that, William said softly. More than anything. And for the first time in 22 years, father and son walked through the same door, toward a future neither had dared to imagine. Would you open the door to someone who abandoned you? If they finally came back to make things right, like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional cinematic stories every week. Don't miss what's coming next.